Okay, here we go.
Okay. And then I hit edit.
Hello, Dr. Joan McCarty. It's a
Oh,
pleasure to be able to meet with you. I know we spoke over the phone. We had a 7 hour conversation. No, I'm just kidding. We had
we
it
did.
was really wonderful though, and
Yes,
rich.
it was.
So thank you for agreeing to meet with me on Zoom today to talk a little bit more in depth about your experience with Grace Holt, Professor Grace Holt of University of Illinois Chicago, and your time there at UIC, and then a little bit about you as well, because you are my goodness, you deserve a documentary all by yourself.
Oh,
So
you flatter
maybe
me.
that no, maybe that would be the next project I should really focus consider on doing, because that's you're just talking to you is a lot there. I'll say this: still waiting for UIC to send me the recording of the presentation I did there for Grace Hope. But
Yes.
at the end
Yes.
of that meeting with them, they told me uh, they said that they can't wait to see your contribution as far as our discussion, and they were saying it would be amazing if you two could get could have a conversation over Zoom or in face to face, a discussion, because they were saying that would be so enriching. And I agree with them. They didn't know I already had that in mind, but they too were excited to hear what you might have to say.
Well, that would
So
be great. Now, which part of the university is this that's uh, saying these wonderful things? Um,
that is Black Studies
oh, it's Black
Department.
Studies. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be happy to share for Black Studies. I mean,
Yes.
Black Studies is there because, largely because of Grace
Yes.
Holt and her, pioneering in that effort.
Yes.
Because, as you know, um,
Hmm.
it, they are dropping Black studies and African American studies or whatever, diasporic studies, whatever they, choose to call it in certain universities, left and right today. And
They
so
are.
she was as I said, a pioneer and brought in numerous people. I took some classes in Black studies. Of course, I was a theater major, but I took classes with uh, Haki, let me say it right, Mahabuti. Uh, but by then, he was still going as Don Lee. So you know how long ago that was. And then Sterling Plump was also teaching the wonderful writer. And I, took a class with Grace Holt. So that was wonderful opportunities there. And the kinds of things
Oh
that they
my.
were able to do. I was gone, meaning graduated by the time so many things happened in Black Studies because
Mm.
I was supposed to be in the class of 1970, but because I joined the Black Panther Party and had a baby and got married and all of that, I actually graduated in 73. I left in what is it? I left in 1969. I was supposed to graduate in 1970, and I came back in 1971 and 72 and finished in 73. So, um, but so things were growing for Black studies because
Yes. Yes.
when I left in 69, that I you probably know better from your research. I don't think there was any Black studies in
Yes.
1969.
There weren't. And at UIC, which is something I want to get into really
Right.
quick. You said something just a moment ago where I was going to start it from. How did you get to UIC, and what was that campus like when you arrived?
Oh, okay, great. Well, I tell the story that, I unfortunately lost my mom when I was a teenager. So my dad was there and he raised the two little children, as we often call the youngest, single-handedly, pretty much. He later on remarried. But my older siblings, all of them, and I had two older sisters. One unfortunately has passed, and I had an older brother, and they all attended what was then known as Chicago Teachers College, which is now Chicago State University. And they went into the Chicago public school system, and a couple of them stayed. And then my big sister uh, became a counselor there. She was a math teacher at first, and then she went back to school and became a lawyer. So, but my father was really proud, and they all graduated, and that was the goal of our parents, for us to go to college, because they were first generation, coming up in the Great Migration. They didn't graduate from
Yes.
college, and that was their goal. So by the time he had gotten the other three out, so to speak, and graduated, he said, "Oh, well, maybe you can go to the new school that was just being built, that used to be called the Pier, but then they were really building a new campus." And so I applied to, I didn't apply that many places, quite frankly, because if Daddy said I could go there, I applied there. But I did apply a couple other places. But unfortunately, and I loved my high school and I loved that experience, but we didn't get so much of great counseling in terms of other schools. I was never even told anything about the historically Black colleges, and I
Wow.
often, and we have, Facebook groups with our high school friends, and sometimes we talk about why didn't they tell us these things? Because many of our Black teachers would have been graduates, but the year was
Yeah.
1966. And I think they thought, oh, you've got a great opportunity. Now the world is opening up to you.
Okay.
I'm thinking that's what they were thinking.
Yes,
And
yes,
you
yes.
can go to these schools that we weren't able to go to. So they just didn't push. They pushed, oh, you could get a scholarship to here and there. And I was pre the real push for scholarships. That would happen maybe in 1968 and 69. But they were sending out feelers to have Black students. I got an offer to go to Cornell free.
Ah,
My father didn't want me to go. That was too far away. And um, and then I tell the story that I was number 9 in a class of approximately 400. National Honor Society. I did pretty well on the ACT. So, but this was a program in Cornell for students who were in academic need. Now, even at 17, I didn't quite like that definition when he talked to me. I remember talking on the phone, but what I didn't like more than that was the program that they had at the time was that you would go to Cornell and it was a free ride and they would put you up in a dorm, but you would take, in my National Honor Society brain, remedial classes. The first year you weren't going to get any credits and they were going to,
well,
acclimate you and all this. And I thought, I think I could make it the first year in college. And I remember calling the
well,
guy, and he made it clear because I asked. I said, "Well, even if I did okay in classes, I couldn't get any credit." Well, this is a person, me, who had a double, and was National Honor Society number 9 in the class.
yes.
That didn't sound like a plan. So the fact that my father didn't want me to go, and then when they said that there was no way that I could, I know what they were going to do. They were going to, and they came to schools that were achieving, Black schools that were
Right.
achieving, and they had, they
Yes.
looked at all that ACT scores. They knew I wouldn't fail the program. You know what I mean? So that they could brag about it. See
Yeah.
what we
Yeah.
did? We uplifted this
Yes.
poor little, but
Yes.
I never saw
Because
myself
they wanted
quite as
the
that.
talented 10th of them.
Right. Now I saw myself as we didn't have any money, but I didn't need, I was in honors classes. You can't tell me that I got to go into remediation for a year so I could get
Yes.
acclimated. I wasn't even, I didn't have that much Black consciousness, but I had some sense of self. And I said, everybody is going to college the first year and acclimating. I'm not that different
Mhm.
from the white kids. I didn't think I was. And so I turned Cornell down and I went to the University of Illinois. I applied. I remember uh, filling out my application. At that time, you had to put a picture, on the application.
Really?
Yes, and they had to rule that out because uh, I guess some schools were
Discrimination.
using it to look and see maybe they could increase uh, their diversity, but I'm sure some were saying, "No, Joan Foster, we don't know who she is, but now we do with that picture." So they don't do that anymore. People are surprised that was required. You had to put, and we had our
Yeah.
little graduation picture, so I put it there. But I was accepted, and I was in the teacher ed program because I was following in the footsteps, and that's kind of what I knew. But when I
Hmm.
got there, because I'd had a wonderful experience in
You
theater,
were you were following in the footsteps of your
my
mom,
sisters, my sister
your
and brother,
sisters.
they were
Okay,
all teachers. They were all in the
all
Chicago
educated.
Public Ed.
I got you.
And so that's kind
Oh
of
yeah.
what we knew. It used to be, especially for a woman, if you're going to go to college, you were generally, if you were kind of working class black, you were probably going to be a teacher or a nurse.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That
I've
was pretty
heard
much
that
it. That was pretty
in
much it.
back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so I chose teaching because I was bad in science, so I knew I wasn't going to do this. I didn't do well in chemistry. So, but I
So
had a
you
wonderful.
entered UIC in the teaching program.
Yes, that was the, I had a teacher scholarship, so my father didn't pay much for tuition. I got pretty much free tuition. Uh, and that pleased him, because every penny was tight in the house. But I
Yes.
had a wonderful experience, and shout out to high school teachers in the drama club at Harlan High School. We had a teacher who went on to go back to school, and then he went on to be a college teacher, Dr. Robinson, and he was directing plays there. And I joined, I remember seeing the first play when I was a first year student. My sister,
Hmm.
one above me, was at the school. She was like a senior. And she said,
Okay.
everybody goes to the drama, the plays. I remember it cost 50 cents. And I was thinking, oh, it's 50 cents. That's a lot of money. But she told me I would be square if I didn't go. And so it
Uh,
was some melodrama called Double Door. And I remember when the curtains parted, I was hooked. It was a murder mystery. It was, nothing to do with anything black, but I was hooked and I
yeah.
wanted to be a part of that. And I joined and I got a chance to do some things for the years that I was there. So I never forgot about drama. And then what did I do? I went over and I was taking some classes and I decided to see a play at the University of Illinois. And therefore I said, I think I'll take some drama classes. And before you know it, I was no longer in teacher education. I said, well, I
Oh,
could
you
be in
changed your
theater.
major.
I could be in theater and speech education. My father didn't care about what it was, as long as I was going to go in 4 years and get out and teach at the Chicago Public Schools, which was a good job. And so I did switch to theater and speech education. Then my junior year, I was listening to all the other students, and they were talking about what their careers were going to be in theater, and they were going to audition and such and have a life in theater. So, although I took a lot of education classes, I didn't, I got out of education. And so, one of the first adult conversations I had with my father was, because he had sent 3 kids, to graduate,
Yeah.
to school, he said,
Yeah.
we were having breakfast, and he said, isn't it about time for you to do your student teaching? And then I was caught, I said, oh, I didn't tell you, I'm not in the teaching track anymore. And he looked at me and said, well, what you going to do? And I said, oh, I'm just going to be an artist. I'm going to act and stuff. He just looked at me, and my father was a man of few words. Sometimes he said, okay, whatever you're going to do. But I'm telling you, when you graduate, you're going to get a job and you're getting out of my house. So whatever, if you're crazy, you're crazy, but I'm letting you know. He
Yes.
didn't really mean it,
Yes.
but I took it
Oh yeah.
as
I
he meant.
understand.
Well, in a way, he did mean it. He meant that I needed to be self-sufficient. He had gotten 3
Yes.
out, and I wasn't going to be wandering around being this magical person doing plays and earning a living. I mean, I think that
Yes.
that is not just black parents. A lot of parents
A
think,
lot of
well,
parents.
wait a minute, what is that? That's not a
Yes.
guarantee.
It's
And
it's
so,
like a mentor once told me when I told him I'm majoring in theater, and his response was, "Well, what does that translate to after graduation? Like, how does
exactly.
that translate to making a job, get earning money every day?
Well, which is a
People have a
valid
hard time.
question, but so
It
people
is.
do need to think about it. But
Mhm.
but it often is a way to say, don't do that. Some parents,
Yes.
we have students right now at Spelman and Morehouse and Clark. They really are, they're over in the theater department all the time, but they're majoring in something else because the parents won't even pay for them to go to school if they major in that because they think it's
Uh,
they're not going to make it and they won't support that.
yes.
So sometimes we say, well, sometimes the bachelor's degree is for the parents and then the graduate degree is for you. You pay for that and you
That's very
do
much
what
for
you
that.
want to do in your
Yes.
life.
Yes, yes. And I kind of understand parents are, especially in these days, I'm sure it's always been the case, want to make sure their child is employable once they graduate.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so they're like, no, you go in this direction, one of these, but the arts and humanities, they kind of get nervous about, you
They
know?
get it, nerds, or maybe you can minor in that, but you got to have something that is solid.
Yeah.
Uh, and I was just too dumb, to be thinking about it that much, because I knew I love theater as much. And, the thought of, going into Chicago public school system, it seemed to be mundane. Although I have I've taught in alternative schools, and so it was enriching. But I just didn't see the strictness, and I was, learning about blackness, and that was not going to be supported in the Chicago public schools at the time I was coming out. I wouldn't have been able to stay in a school and talk about black things. I would have been in trouble with the principals. I knew that. So,
Yeah.
but it worked out. But I ended up coming to the theater department. And we talked about some of the problems in casting and
Yeah.
involvement. Uh, there weren't very many theater majors that were black.
And
Actually,
this is
oh,
when you
I
entered UIC, it was 1960,
66, 66.
66. So
Mm-hmm.
this is before Grace Holt entered the picture because
Right,
she didn't come
exactly.
until 69.
Right, right. And so I would, when I went back to graduate school, that's when I was encountering Black studies. And, so I graduated and then I did many other things. And then I decided to go back for the master's degree later on. And that's when I encountered Grace Holt. But while I was
So
there, mhm, yes.
I'm sorry, when you first went to the theater department before Grace Holt was there, what was that experience like? First of all, what made you join the program, even though it wasn't black just yet? And then when Grace Holt entered the picture 3 years later, what kind of difference did you see in the theater department at that point?
Well, I'll tell you, as an undergraduate, I just wanted to recreate some of the experiences that I had in high school. We didn't do any
Yes.
black play by a black playwright, even in high school. It was, to me, it was just, oh, we're acting. This is, I'm learning about, character building and so on and so forth. In high school, I didn't have that much understanding of black theater. I just knew this was wonderful. I think we had read, mm, mm, I didn't even know that much about even the classic, A Raisin in the Sun. I don't think we ever read that.
Mhm.
Interestingly, that my sister, she reminded me when she was an adult that she had a relationship with a mentor next door to us, a wonderful woman who was taking her to places and exposing her to things. And they went to see at the Blackstone Theater the Raisin in the Sun before it got to Broadway. She saw Sidney
Oh my
Poitier,
God.
and I said, I knew that Mrs. Garnett had taken her someplace, and I always remembered it. But I didn't realize until Betty was an adult. And she said, yeah, that was Raisin in the Sun that I saw. She reminded me,
Oh
maybe she
my.
said it. And I said, oh my goodness, the classic. She saw it with Ruby Dee and Diana Sands, because it was
Yeah.
on tour, a little bit.
Yeah.
Went to
Yeah.
major
Yeah.
cities before it went to Broadway, and she saw that. So uh, in 66, I hadn't seen anything other than what we saw in high school. I don't think I saw anything professional. But but wait a minute, I take that back. Uh, there was a Hull House, which
Whole house.
Hull
Yes.
House, and Hull
Yes.
House,
Jane Addams.
uh, Bob Sickinger had a number of theaters that were operating in Hull houses. And there was
Oh yeah.
one at Parkway Community Theater on 67th, 67th and Eberhard. And I
Okay.
went to Sunday matinees to see Black actors. I don't even know how I found out about them, but it was first under Hull House. It was not Black run, but I saw, the Amen Corner. I remember that. I saw, I
Yes.
have to think about the names of the things that I saw. I remember outstandingly the Amen Corner. Uh, and, uh, and that was the beginning of seeing some Black theater. And to me, it was magical. I wasn't involved. I just was,
Uh-huh.
I bought a ticket. My father gave me $2.50 for a student ticket. And I took the bus home and saw Black actors on stage doing fabulous work. Now, we can get back to that later and how that ties into the University of Illinois, maybe even Grace Holt. But at any rate, so then I did get to see that. So by the time I went to college, they weren't doing anything Black or anything like that. I was just trying to get in anything. Really, I was just trying to, everybody was auditioning. Um, I didn't get in things, but there were a number of students who didn't get in things their first year. But what stood out to me was, and I wrote a paper about it. I wish I had saved the paper. Uh, I,
Mhm.
and it was about casting. And I would have some teachers that would say, "Oh, there are no Black people in this play." And I'm thinking, my daddy paying tuition, I mean, there was not any concept of non-traditional casting. If I had to be related to anybody, or if it took place in Russia in the 1800s, I wasn't going to be in it. I used to just look at what the season was going to be and try to find out
Yes.
if if there was any role that I might be able to get. And the truth is that I did graduate and I did get into some things, but I was never, ever cast as a relative of anybody, you know, uh, never.
Wow.
So I got cast in the House of Bernarda Alba, but I was Poncia, which is a wonderful role, but she is the maid, you know.
Yeah.
So while as an undergraduate, of course, Black theater was, burgeoning, was just coming to
Yeah.
fore. And so, uh, we had the Black Student Organization that I was involved in and such. And so I began to look into Black theater. And so while at the University of Illinois, we formed a group called the Actors Black. And it was Black students, just like we have the Black choir, because the
Yes.
music department wasn't meeting the needs of the Black students. And,
Yes.
they didn't know anything about gospel music and such. So students who were music majors or maybe weren't, they wanted an outlet. So the Black choir was a big thing. And so at that point, the Actors Black became a big thing. We would do, our first production was The Dutchman. We did, Baraka's The Dutchman. And then we would,
Yes. Yes.
find other plays to do. We did 4 plays by Ben Caldwell. We did things. We just, and then we sold little cheap tickets like $1. And we filled up the little places that we were able to use. Um, um, One teacher, Dr. Natalie Schmidt, she did a play called Benito Sereno, which was about an uprising. And I,
Right.
got a lot of people in the Actors Black to be in that play. And then so we got used to coming over to the theater and rehearsing. Okay, so that show went well. And then when we got to, then we thought we were kind of part of the theater department. So there was a rehearsal
Mm.
space that we thought we could, rehearse in. No, we didn't really ask permission, but it was empty and we thought we could be there. And then somebody, another teacher said, "You all aren't rehearsing, things from the theater department, so you all can't be here and such." So we all felt betrayed because they needed us in this play, but now we really not
Yeah.
needed, so we can't even do anything. So we kept on doing the Actors Black, but it was not a good feeling of
This was
really being a theater
a
major.
time when yeah, this is also the time you're talking about is a time when a lot was happening around the world. Just for context for people who might watch this or later or things like that, when in 66 is when Douglas Turner Ward would write that piece about American theater and
Yes,
for whites only, American theater
yes,
for whites only. And
right,
that piece really had a profound effect in theater spaces. So he wrote that piece. Douglas Turner Ward, who is the writer. He wrote the play Day of Absence.
Yes.
Did you happen to have you ever did that play, by the way, Day of
I've
Absence?
seen it, but I've never directed it or anything
Okay.
like that. But
Okay.
I've seen it, numerous times. And
Yes.
we were
So
aware.
that was it. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, no. Well, we didn't have the internet, but we were finding out. The drama review did an issue on Black theater, 1969. It was just called Black Theater,
Okay.
and they had plays.
Yes.
They listed theaters in different cities, so we were aware that all over. And then by 1969, 1970, there were, commonly called the Black exploitation movies. So we were
Mm,
seeing more Black people on screen. We were seeing even adaptations of plays like Black Girl was made into a movie, and a couple of other plays actually ended up being movies. People didn't know that they were necessarily plays beforehand. But so we were just surrounded by, the Black arts movement. So that made
yes.
us very much more conscious, and it made me conscious. And so I didn't seek as much in the theater department, but I was still a major and I wanted to be in
Yes.
things. I got in some things, but not I didn't have the experience. And as a kind of senior thesis, I kind of wrote about my experience
Mm,
about being a theater student. Uh, I was
yes.
pretty much at that point the only one, and then there was somebody who preceded me. So by the time I came back to graduate school, she was there in graduate school as well. But it was a kind of lonely existence. We just didn't have it.
Yeah.
Now, later on, because I had many lives at the University of Illinois, I would come back even later to really finish the master's program. I tell students, never give up on it.
That was in the
I'm on the 10
70s.
year plan. It takes me 10 years to get any degree, at least 10 years. So I came back in the 80s, but then I came back in the 90s and really completed. So
Oh,
I saw more students, Black students by the 90s. They were doing more non traditional casting. They were doing maybe one play in the season would be, a new work or, by a Black uh, uh, playwright. There were more Black students who were majoring in theater. They still had their problems, but it was nothing like the problems we had had in previous years. So I saw them grow. And I credit um, Black Studies and, Grace Holt, because I think, now, don't quote me, but the last two, I do believe, chairs of the department at U of I have been Black, and Lydia Diamond is the chair now, the
Lydia
wonderful
Diamond.
playwright. And I got, as a
She is.
professional, I stage managed one of her shows. And then, what is it? Derek, I've forgotten his last name. He's at Juilliard now. But,
Okay.
right. Uh, uh, it'll come to me. But
Yes.
yeah, he worked with August Wilson so much. And he was
Mhm.
the chair. So it was kind of unheard of, to even have a chair that was Black. And he did some wonderful
Yes.
things there. And she's doing
Yeah.
wonderful things there as well. So,
Yeah.
the whole uh, school has changed. I visited the campus, maybe about 4 years ago. And, I was
Yes.
just shocked to see how many Black and brown faces I saw. I just didn't realize, I said, oh, okay. That
This
was
is not the
rare.
university I used to
This
know.
is not it. This is not 1966 when it was uh, it was common for you to be the only person in your of color. Pretty much the only
Yeah.
person of color. You may have had another person of color, but you've been the only African American in a number of your classes. And we
And
got used to
sadly,
that.
yeah. And sadly, while there has been many changes, obviously, and for obvious reasons, that a lot still remains the same. Like what I will say as an under hearing your story about when you got to UIC in 66, how the theater department was, reminds me of when I got to University of North Texas as an undergrad in 2003. I was one of maybe two. I feel like I was the only one, but maybe there was one other person who was a Black person in the theater program. And I do know that by the time 2007 rolled around, I ended up doing my own play, which was and casting all Black actors. And like you said, we were filling up lyceums It was just a wonderful experience with all black because you weren't getting that in the theater department, and we were not getting those experiences in the theater department at that time. Again, things changed quite a bit now for the better, but it's just crazy to think about how what they say, the more things change, the more things stay the same. But I know when you entered in 66, and then by 69 is when Grace Holt comes along, joins the program, speech and theater communications program at UIC, and she and Bill
Yes.
Rafael. Can you
Yay,
tell me,
Bill.
do you know Bill was amazing? I see that he worked
Bill
there
was
in the
amazing.
program for 50 years maybe, and he was
Bill was,
sincere.
I probably wouldn't have stayed had it not been for Bill Rafael, quite frankly. And
Mm,
a number of students say the same things, not just Black students. Bill was so dedicated to the University of Illinois and all the students in the theater program. He was just always active, doing really innovative plays. Everybody wanted to be in Bill's play, but we wanted to be in any play, but we really wanted to work with Bill. He would really give you, I remember I was in his class and I had done a monologue or something and I had thrown my heart into it, and there was a grade and he had a little rubric and I ended up with like a C plus. I said, oh no. I have, I have, maybe I better go back into, you know, education. C plus. Oh no, I'll never act with a C plus. With I'm surrounded by in Chicago. We were looking at the Black actors that were working, and I said, oh
Yeah,
no, they A, and I'm a C plus. I'll never get a job. Uh, but he was just a real person, but he wanted you to improve and he would work with you and so on and so forth. So I knew Bill
yes,
all my lives at the University of Illinois. Um, as actually I was in a play, Italian Straw Hat. I was so excited. Of course, again, I wasn't related to anybody. I was sort of like a courtesan, but I had a hat factory or something. And the actor Michael Gross, I was playing next to Michael Gross. I don't know if you remember Family Ties, but Michael Gross has worked professionally in so many things. He's just a really fine actor. He ended up going to Yale after graduating from U of I. But I got a review in the student newspaper. Not I, but the play got a review by,
yes,
ironically, somebody who was a theater major. And Bill was trying to make us understand that you just can't pay attention to every review you get. You listen to your director, and you listen and you follow what the director wants you to do, and that's your
yes,
guy. That's who you have to listen to. And if you believe the good reviews, then you believe the bad ones. So take every review with a grain of salt. But it was particularly damaging. I think the guy wasn't kind of, if I could say, wrapped too tight. So he had something against the theater department, even though he was a major for a while. But anyway,
uh-huh.
it was all, but I was the person who was singled out. And I still remember it. I need to try and find that. Maybe you can find it. If I can find the year we
Yeah.
did it. I can still kind of quote because my maiden name was Foster. So it said Joan Foster was the only Negro in the cast. And unfortunately, the tokenism didn't pay off.
Whoa. Oh
Woo! It
my
didn't say
God.
what I did wrong. That was the line. And then they went on and talked about something else. It didn't say, well, she didn't do this or she didn't do that. And so
Yes.
I was singled out and I was so embarrassed and so hurt. And I look back at that and now I can kind of chuckle about it. And I'm not laughing about it yet, but
Yeah.
I I was thinking that that could have been a teaching moment. But I think that all the professors were probably uncomfortable. They did the general, don't pay attention to that, but nobody took the moment to say, Joan, I know you were singled out and you were singled out racially and whatever. Or they could have said it to everybody. And then this is not
Yeah.
what you do when you review somebody. You don't talk about their
Right.
race and call them a token. What kind of
Yeah.
reviewer is that? But none of that got done. But I did that work. Even later on in my head, I would know how to handle that as a professor if somebody got singled out in a school production. Period. But especially race and token and Negro, all of that.
Mm,
But
my gosh.
but I'm glad in some ways. I'm not happy that that happened, but I'm sort of, can I say, appreciative because it took me on a road so that I became a union activist. I became very sensitive about the whole idea of non-traditional casting and fairness in American theater, and finding a place for everybody, the LGBTQ plus community, Black actors.
Yes.
I worked hard
Yes.
to get Asian actors, believe it or not,
Mm.
cast
Yes.
in the Broadway production of Miss Saigon, because they weren't, and we all know that Jonathan Price came and did the engineer, and there was a
Yeah.
big fight about that with the union. So the Black actors were standing up for the Asian actors and such. So those experiences taught me to fight. And unfortunately, just like you said, I still hear from actors who have gone to undergrad and graduate programs as Black students, how they have not felt valued, or they did not get cast in things, or people, asked them to, can you be more Black, or just stuff, that
Mm.
they had to
Yes.
endure.
Yes.
Or the
Yes.
idea that
My
you're there as a token, that you're, in quote, as they use DEI against us, that somehow
Oh yes.
you
Mhm.
wouldn't be here if it weren't for the fact that you're a woman,
Oh
or that
yeah.
you're Black, or that you're a
Yes.
Black man, whatever. All kinds of things like that you don't
I even
deserve
heard that.
what you got.
Absolutely. I even heard that quote verbatim as a when I entered the theater PhD program. It was someone, colleague, student in the program said, um, if you only got in because you're Black. And I have a friend who applied and didn't get in the program, and they are more qualified.
Yeah, I had a similar, how insulting. And how would he know
It's
what
yes,
qualified
into
is?
my face.
I had the same thing. I had a particular scholarship. Well, this was
Hmm.
interesting. I went to Southern Illinois for, I was ABD. I did not finish there. That's
Yes.
another story. But
Yeah.
one of the people who came in with me, and I think he thought he was doing me a favor. He said, "Well, I wouldn't tell people that I got that particular, scholarship that was for Black people, because they think that you're not as good, whatever." And I just said, "Oh no, no, let me get this straight. They had three spots, no, two spots for people. When I checked with the chair and had a conversation, I'd been teaching at Spelman, I had been directing, I held a union card, I'd been stage managing. She said, "Okay, you're in. I would ask you,"
Yes.
she said, "would you apply for this scholarship that would allow you to have, your tuition paid? And that way I can use the two spots that I have designated to bring in two other people. Otherwise, you'll definitely be one of them. And then I can only use one, bring in one other." And I said, "Oh, yeah, sure, I'll apply." And I got it. So I told him to his face, "No, the reason you're here is because of me." I told him. He turned all red. He thought he was doing me a favor, by telling me something. But his mind was blown. I don't know if it would have been their name. I'll say, well, I shouldn't say their name. But anyway, I don't know which one would have gotten in and which one would not have, but it was one of them.
Yes.
And because
Yes. Yes.
she said that we started the conversation with "you are in."
My
So
gosh.
well, I didn't.
Yes.
I expected to be. I had a very decent, GPA and resume, and I've been
Hmm.
teaching. Why wouldn't I be accepted? So
Yes. Right. Right.
so I wasn't like, "Oh, thank you so much." I mean, at some point we get to know who we are, and
We do. We do.
yeah, you don't
Yes.
get big
Yes.
headed, but you're
With
not shocked when you
that's
get something.
it's what W.E.B. Du Bois said when at least it's what they quote him as saying when he graduated from Harvard,
I know,
and he said the honor was Harvard's.
and
I
it
assure
was.
you was, and
It,
it
it was.
was.
I love that. I know that quote. And
Yes.
I think that is fabulous. And I think we all have to have a
Yes.
little of that in us,
You
because we
do.
have
You got to just know
contributed.
yourself.
We have earned,
Yes.
because nobody's giving us anything. But of course, we live in a society where so many people that think that they just question anything. You
Yeah.
graduate, you're a medical doctor. Oh, I don't want a black doctor. Oh, I don't want a black nurse.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want anything.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
always, and you come into professional theater in some of these white theaters the same way. Oh, they only
And
hire
that
because, and then you're under a scrutiny that nobody else is under. So, that happens too.
which brings me to this when you got to UIC in 66, and then when Grace Holtz comes along in 69. First let me back up to say you already know this, but I'm just making it clear is that
Yeah.
my current research that I'm working on now, and I've already presented on at UIC's Grace Holt this year's 2026 Grace Holt celebration that they had in April. But my current research examines Grace Holt's work in developing what she called an ethnic theater and initiative at University of Illinois Chicago, and how that work intersects with the or intersected with the creation of the Black Studies program there at UIC, which obviously she was the founding director of the Black Studies program at UIC. And to this day, she's highly celebrated for her amazing contribution and her dedication to developing the Black Studies, what became the Black Studies department at UIC that is still thriving today. But what I'm hoping to do is to preserve um, your memories of Professor Grace Holt and better understand her vision through your experiences, uh, since you learned from her directly. Because what I'm positing from my research is that Grace Holt not only founded and was the founding director of the Black Studies program at UIC, but at the same time, simultaneously, from the archival records, she was also aiming to develop what she called a ethnic theater program. And that program never got off. It never launched to a full-on program, but the initiative did take off, where she was instrumental in doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work in order to get funding and to get a entire class curriculum built and structure set up to have an entire full ethnic theater program. And that work began with her with Grace Holt, but also with her focusing on Black theater specifically. And so, with that being said, could you tell us what your memory of meeting Grace Holt and how did you see her presence making a difference in that space at UIC? Because she entered, let me make that clear too. She entered UIC in the speech and communications department in 69, but by the very early 70s, right away, she moved on to the to start the Black Studies program. And even while doing the Black Studies program, she was still very much connected, involved in the theater department too, with this ethnic theater initiative, working with Bill Rafael in order to
Yes.
keep the Black theater stuff going. And she even created according to the archives, we see that she even had what would you call it? A class, basically developed classes where there was a merger between Black Studies program and the ethnic theater, which was Black theater specifically, that she Black theater classes and courses working in conjunction with one another. So yeah, could you
Yeah, I'd
just
love to
take us
talk
to?
about that. Yes, well, I left in 69 and I didn't return until
Yes,
like 71 or something. And by that time, I was acquainted. And when I came back, we weren't called the Actors Black when I came back, but we were doing, some Black theater. I was teaching assistant. Actually, I taught a class, but the teacher of record was Bill Rafael, but on Black theater. So I really taught the first class in Black theater, because, it's very interesting. And I'm not trying to throw any shade on Bill, but I have encountered
yes,
that sometimes the academics, the white academics, they act like they can't read a book or something, and not saying that they should just go and teach, because I think it should be somebody who has a passion
yeah,
and has done the research. But they,
mhm,
I've seen it in various circumstances. They just look blank. We don't know anything about theater. So why don't you go? Why don't you read? If you are a
yes,
theater professional, you should know some things about not only Black theater, but theater globally, diasporically,
Yeah.
keep up.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't bring on an expert. I'm not saying I was an expert, but somebody who's made that the central to their research.
Sure.
But anyway, uh, but Bill knew, I knew the literature, and we had, I don't know if it, I'd have to look and see what year that was, but it was really, it may have been under an independent study. I think it was under Black Studies though, and theater. You could cross register. And we had a full class meeting, we had about 15 folks and we read about 10 plays and had discussions and tests and, all of that kind of stuff. It was vibrant. And sometimes Bill sat in. Uh, I don't think Grace Holt ever came, but she was talking to Bill about it. I mean, I
Yes.
think that they drew it up, the idea together, and then decided Joni
Hmm.
could teach it. Because I was a teaching assistant when I came back, so maybe I was teaching under. That was one thing that I was
Really
allowed to
quick,
do.
really quick. I'm sorry. Your name appears as the teacher on record for it was I think I don't have it in front of me, but it was considered I think it was independent.
Independent. Okay, so maybe
Yeah.
because I was a teaching assistant, because I could have my name attached to it. It's so many years ago, I can't quite
Yes.
remember, but I know that Bill
Right.
and he told me that Grace Holt had, they were working, and I'm sure. I don't recall her coming to the class. I could be wrong. Maybe she did, but they approved and talked about the syllabus and such. And I in the back of my mind, I think I was talking to her about what we were going to cover in it too, and she was all for it and such. So I think that's correct. So so you could say that she fostered that first, real
Yes.
formal class, which I don't know if they even have that in the curriculum in the theater program now. They may or may not. I haven't looked at the courses that are offered, but you got Lydia Diamond and you
Yes.
got these other folks who were, key. So I know it got in there somewhere. It probably is in it, but I think it belongs probably well, it probably is housed in theater uh, and
Mhm.
not necessarily Black Studies, but I wish it would be in Black Studies. I'd love to go back and teach
Yeah.
that.
By the way, side note, I did reach out to the department, Black Studies department, or when I did my presentation in April, one of the last slides I talked about the need. I feel there is a need to not only celebrate and highlight on record Grace Holt's ethnic theater initiative and what she did in that light, not just Black Studies, but also to honor her, to have a Black theater, Black studies courses, have a professor or professors in the theater, Black theater spaces in under her name, the Grace Holt Theater Professor.
It should
You
be,
know,
why not?
it's
And the school should
yes,
fund that, the Grace Hope
absolutely,
professors, and it could evolve. Maybe it's something that
yes,
you hold it for a 2-year appointment or something, but she
right,
should
right,
be
right.
honored, because she was the force. Now, we did the department as I was an undergrad, I mean, in grad, we did a number of plays. We did Ed Bullen's The Fabulous Miss Marie. I
Yes,
remember the theater, wonderful Ted Ward. I don't know if you're familiar with Theodore Ward. Theodore Ward was a
yes,
WPA, playwright. He wrote Big White Fog and Our Land. Those are the ones that people uh, uh, really know him from.
know him.
Uh,
Yeah,
I was in one of his plays again at Parkway Community Theater. By then, it was Experimental Black Actors Guild, and they presented a play called The Doggers. And that's a Ted Ward play. So, and he was alive at that point and he came to rehearsals and such, So we were reaching out, many of the people who graduated from the University of Illinois. Uh, I think Cheryl Bruce, she should probably come up in the records because she was also teaching assistant and she directed plays and she was a fabulous actor who went on to work professionally. Cheryl Lynn Bruce, if you just Google her up, she has
okay,
done, a whole lot. And she's still in Chicago. And she is a very close friend of mine. And I mentioned that you were doing research in this area.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Mm.
Well, thank you for that.
So
Do you, oh, go
mm,
ahead. Keep
I
going.
was going to say that, uh, Grace attended those productions that we did, especially. And I think she was the one who got Ted Ward to come to The Fabulous Miss Marie, which he did not like that play. He didn't, it wasn't the
Uh,
directing of the play, but it was Bullen's. And Bullen's
uh,
takes chances. And, I
he
really
does.
think people should do the Fabulous Miss Marie again. I think it's underproduced. I've never seen it done other than when I did it. Uh, and it's,
Yeah.
and I think we did a really nice job with it. But it's about the black middle class. So he didn't like it, But Ted was very opinionated, and he has the right to be opinionated. But I think that she lined him up, to come. Mr. Ward, as we still call him. Well, some of us call him Ted. But so she was at those productions and such. I definitely know that. And she was close to Bill. I don't know how close, but I would see them together, and he would mention her, in terms of anything that was going on. Uh, but uh, let's see, I'm trying to think of the other. I'd have to look to see what other plays they did. They did Once on This Island when I would go back to actually finish. So I started in like 71 with no 71 to 73. I was just or 70. I was just trying to finish the bachelor's to get out, and then I came back
Mm.
as a teaching assistant, but I didn't finish until all the way. I came back. They were so kind to me. I came back in probably like 95, so or four or something to finish. It was is crazy. But Bill was still there. But at that time, I don't know when did she pass?
I believe it was,
Because she got
I have to look.
sick.
I think 99, 90 or 91. Let me look right now. I think it was
Well,
91.
right. I remember I got on a bus, a CTA. I don't remember what street it was. She was on the bus. We had a very lovely conversation. She was uh, carrying the oxygen thing, uh,
Uh, yeah, she
and
died in 1991.
right. So, but we had a nice conversation. She was encouraging me to go on and finish my degree. I remember she said that. I don't remember all the things, but she was talking about her health and everything. Uh, uh, but she was full of, uh, I won't say energy because she didn't look well, but she was full of spirit. I can use that word. Uh,
Yeah.
and I thought about her, and then I learned that she passed shortly after I saw her on the bus. But I knew that she had built, and brought in those folks. I'm sure she would have been there when she had to bring in. You're familiar with well, nobody calls him Don Lee anymore, but Haki Malbuti from Third World Press, uh, and Sterling Plump, who was a poet with Obasi, Organization of Black American Culture. You know, uh, those are the
Uh-huh.
people who were there when I was there. Uh, and I took a class with them. But I just found out, it was a couple of years ago. I think she passed away. Maybe even just a year ago. Marcelina Morgan, who should come up.
Okay. Oh,
Who was her teaching
she
assistant?
did come up. Yes, it
Right.
came.
And
Her
well,
name is in the archive, Grace Holt
right.
Papers archives.
Yeah. Well, she got her PhD and she had taught for me. And maybe you want to look and see what kind of papers she has left because I can't remember, but if you look her up, she was at a university
Yeah.
for many years. She was tenured. Um, and I'm sure she probably wrote about Grace Holt. I bet she's got some papers in, but she was her teaching assistant when I took her class. And and Grace Holt, many people came to uh, Grace, Professor Holt, because she just took an interest in Black students. So she was a go-to,
Hmm.
because we didn't have many people who, Black
Yes.
professors. I think, now let me get it right, until I went, so I even encountered her in the graduate program. So I think I'm pretty sure, yeah, I went through all of undergrad and I never had a Black professor. Never,
Mm.
never.
Wow.
And then I had Sterling Plump and I had Taki Malbuti. And then, of course,
Hmm.
Grace Holt. So slowly but surely, in the mid 70s, they began to have more Black instructors at the University of Illinois. But we never had, let me make sure I'm right. No, the theater program didn't have anybody Black even in the 90s. And
Wow.
and then I'd have to, excuse me, look up the uh, Derek. I don't know why. Where's my phone? He's at Juilliard. Why I'm forgetting, but he was very active in the theater community, and he's a August Wilson. I don't want to say scholar, but he was a men. He was very close to the August Wilson family, and he knows things about him. But I don't think that's not his area. He's a director, so that's not his
Yeah.
area of expertise. Uh, um, but um, he was at the University of Illinois, and now there is Lydia Diamond. And so she paved the
Mm.
way for that kind of involvement. And when Derek was there, he was doing, all kinds of plays, but he was definitely doing uh, Black theater there. And I know that she does that too, but she, as a
Yeah.
chair, you know,
Right.
got to spread it around. It's not a Black theater
Oh, yeah.
program. But as a matter of fact,
Yes.
I'm working with somebody in this project, Ann and Emmett. He's actually playing Emmett, and I didn't know him. I mean, I knew him from Chicago because I was working as a stage manager at the Goodman, and he was an understudy. But then I had occasion to really look at his resume just a week or so ago and recognize that he comes out of U of I, and
Uh,
under Lydia Diamond. He's a young person. So I
yes.
said, oh,
Yes.
okay, I got to talk to him about my alma mater. We share the
Yes.
alma mater. He
Yes.
doesn't know me from Adam Southgate. He remembers me from, being the assistant stage manager, but
Uh,
uh, I didn't have a lot of
so
interaction with him.
if I ask a couple of reflecting questions,
Sure, sure.
wait, first of all, but you did say Grace Holt was you had her as a professor in the
Yeah,
70s.
yeah. Well,
And
my brain is not functioning as well. It may have been the 80s,
okay.
but something happened, and I don't think I stayed in the class. But Marcelina Morgan,
Okay.
it might have been the 80s, and I might have been pulled out because, I was a mom at that time, trying to
Mm.
work and such. But I remembered, loving the class, but I knew I
Yeah.
had to withdraw reluctantly but Marcelina was there as the teaching assistant. And I knew Marcelina because also she worked in a bookstore, a Black bookstore that's no longer in Chicago. But she was a young researcher and writer. And I was sorry
Mm.
it popped up on my timeline because she wasn't my friend, but she was a scholar, and so it just came up in feed that she had
Mm.
passed. And I wondered if you, um, her name, first name was Marcelina and Morgan, and I
Yes,
think
I see her name in
yeah, and
the archive.
I don't remember what school she was a professor, and uh,
Mm.
I got my, I probably could look it up, but I wonder if she has
Yeah.
some papers because she was close at that time to Grace Holt.
Yes. Yes.
She probably,
Okay. And I can, but I do have a couple of reflective questions for you.
sure.
What did you, what do you think historians have overlooked about Grace Holt?
Oh, they just overlooked her, period. Where's the book or where are the articles about what she did? And I'm so
Mhm.
glad that you're doing this research because it's going to fill uh, a void, basically. And I think that happens. I look at Spelman College, and it was really started the theater program by a woman, but the person that they named the theater after, and you know and revere as the kind of you know, big person there is a man. And, just things I think that we
Yes,
sometimes, women are, the engines behind things, but sometimes it just get lost in the history. So I think that's wonderful. And I'm happy to hear because I don't know what Black Studies, but Black Studies is
yes.
not a department, is it? It's a program
It
still?
is. It is. It's a department now.
Okay.
It's been a department for quite a while, but they do an annual celebration in I think it's always in April, celebrating her contribution to founding of that department and and just honoring her in that respect. Um, so they do that annually. I do know that for sure, and they bring out different scholars and not it might be in Black Studies, but somewhere along those lines, and they speak and I think it's about a week long celebration.
Mhm. She was also close or to uh, Thomas Kochman, who was in
Oh,
the communications department. He should probably appear because I remember him talking about Grace Holt. Uh, and he was in communications, and his specialty was black vernacular and black speech. Uh,
oh yes, which
Thomas
is what
Koch.
she was. Yes, which she has papers about Black speech. She was an advocate
He
for
quotes her
that.
in some things. Uh, I
Okay.
think the name of the first book was Rapping and Styling Out. Thomas Koch, and
Okay,
he's
I'll look into that.
still around. And I haven't talked to him in
Hmm.
years, but he would have some memories of Grace Holt. Oh, he
Yes.
would be a great person to contact. Now, it it has been years, but I would have known had he passed. So he's still around in Chicago. Thomas Kochman. Kochman used to have
Okay.
Kochman Communications, and oh no, now I'm thinking about people who would have known. And then Haki Maabuti is still around, and so he would have had to have been hired by Grace Holt to teach in Black Studies.
Okay.
So that would be, he's still very active and and such.
Yes.
So
For
yes,
these
but I think
recommendations,
that
definitely.
her whole contribution and her vision,
Mhm.
I'm glad that you're doing this research because it really, I think that even people in the department don't know about it.
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes.
You pass
See,
away
when
and
I
then if you don't
yes,
leave
and
papers or if you don't have a researcher like you who finds
yeah.
things, then they remember the names and that's what it is.
So that leads me to say how I came to this work, and I'll lead to the next reflective question. But when in 2020 I was working on my dissertation, um, that on a topic that I didn't get to make my dissertation topic, um, but anyway, when I went to Chicago, I went there for a theater conference that was downtown. And while I was there, a friend of mine who I was with said, let's go." She needed oh, let's go to the Hull House, and the Hull House is on the
Right.
campus
Oh, I know.
of UIC.
Oh,
Yeah, you know also well.
I know exactly where it is.
So yes, so we toured the Hull House, and because there's a relationship between the Hull House and theater and all of these types of social where social work and theater always merge. You got the Jellos in Cleveland. You
Right.
got there was another Hull House in New York that all get I forget his name at the moment, um but the Hull House has a theater history to it too. It's the one in Chicago. So anyway, these are other ones are settlement homes is what I'm thinking about, settlement houses. So when we were there on UIC's campus, my friend and I both said, let's just go to the library to do some research. She wanted to research for her dissertation, and likewise with me. So when I get to the library, I asked those at the front desk, do you have anything on Black theater? And to my dismay, they said no. They said, but we do have the papers of Grace Holt if you want to look at it. And didn't know what that was. I'm like, oh, I'm not a
Wow.
student here. I'm just here for a week. And it was like, oh, well, and they explained she was the founder of the Black Studies department. And she was a Black woman. So I said, oh, okay. And they told me she's very celebrated as such. And so when they brought out the folders, I started with the first one. And I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest. But right away, I started seeing flyers for the Amen Corner, James Baldwin. And I
Oh,
see
yeah,
directed
yeah,
by
yeah. I directed it.
Joan McCarty. And I'm like,
She
and I
was
started seeing
there.
other things. And I see correspondence uh, between she, Bill Rafael, and she and the chancellor, and about the need for ethnic theater program. And she was trying to get funding behind it, bring in two professors, and there was as a line item with a salary attached to it. And
Wish we had
and I
had it.
started. Right. So I started seeing your name throughout the archives and as a director and I saw the correspondence between you to her
Right.
about we had this many students come out to the rehearsal. It was wonderful. And so I started thinking while looking through the archives, wait a minute. They said they don't have anything on Black theater, but
But
I'm
they do.
finding so many papers about Black theater as it pertains to Grace Holt. So I asked the librarian, did Grace Holt start a theater department or ethnic theater department or something along those lines? And she said, no, that's not that we know of, but you should get in touch with, and the name is missing me. But it was another professor in the Black Studies department. She still works there, but she was the chair at this time of that department. So I emailed her and I said, "Hey, is there a correlation between Grace Holt and Black theater? I know she is over the Black Studies. She founded that, but what I'm finding, and I wrote some of the things I found, and the director at the time said." This is news to me. This would be news to us because the only thing we know about her is that she helped found the Black Studies Department here at UIC, but we don't know anything about Black theater. So that would be news to us. Keep looking through the archives to make sure. And so I started looking through the archive more. I coming back to Arizona, I was in touch with the archivist who was emailing me different documents, and I'm like, "Ah,
See there.
and I put it together, like, wait a minute. So, and then my question was, wonder why people don't know about this. And I wonder, and what does this information, how does this information shape the legacy and the way we honor and think of Grace Holt as it pertains to her work at UIC. And so that brings me to writing that up, writing it up, and now wanting to put an article together with the information I presented in April, but also with information from this interview. But so that's why I'm so excited to speak with you, which leads to my next reflection question. Why do you think her work in theater has received so little attention?
Well, hmm, I think that in general, and I don't know all the dynamics of the speech and theater communications and such.
Yes,
And then if you think of what the population, the enrollment was,
yes,
uh, we were,
yes.
we were, we were in quote literally the minority, and they weren't so concerned about us, but she was, and Bill, I like to say Bill liked to foster and support
Yes. Yeah.
uh, us. So I would need to talk with Cheryl to really remember, we did, but other productions that I know she was supportive of. But because if we had to do them in the theater, we had to get permission. It had to go through Bill,
Mm,
but I know that
mm,
she would attend and she was supportive of those efforts. So I remember I
mm.
did a piece, a one act Sugar Mouth Sam, Don't Dance No More. We did Philip Hayes Dean,
Yes.
piece, and it wasn't in the season. I don't think it was in the season. I would have to ask Cheryl, Uh, uh, and these are some good productions. So I
Mhm.
wonder if you find any writings in your research about, I could give you the names of things. So I'm sure that there was a discussion uh, with Bill, and for us to be in the theater to be able to produce, and we had
Yes.
sound
Yes.
costumes and everything. She had to be in it, you know, and Bill
Yes.
was the kind of the conduit. Let me put it that way.
For sure. For sure.
I'm sure of that. Uh, so. You know, well,
Yeah.
you'd have to go back to the 70s and 80s, and it was the struggle for recognition of anything Black, the struggle
Mm.
to even get a Black Studies program and such. And
Yes.
then theater, and theaters, looked down upon, period, in
Yes.
terms of,
Yes.
research institutions and so on and so forth. But
Right.
Bill was very instrumental because we used to be at the 11th Street Theater, which is now part of Columbia College, and we didn't even have a space. We uh, rented. I say we, the department rented from the Board of Jewish Studies. I remember the early productions. We could never have a show on Fridays because that was their holy day, and they didn't want anything going on in their space. So we would always have a show on Thursday, and then it would be Saturday and Sunday. You know, it was very interesting. Um, so Bill, and I'm sure she had, and I don't know if you would find support for that in your research, but then
Mhm.
the communications building, it wasn't there when I first started in 66. There was no such thing as that, So we just came to our classes, we had classes in regular buildings, and then we had the theater, where we did
Mhm.
the work. So that didn't get built, and I don't know exactly what year, but by the time I came back in the master's program, it was built because I had office there as a teaching assistant. Uh, and so I'm sure she was, instrumental, and
Yes.
everybody had to be
Mhm.
instrumental in making sure
Yes.
that they got the funds to build that. So I'm wondering if you might want to even research the history of that particular building and her input, because that's where Black Studies, that's where they are still now, aren't they? In the communications building.
Yes. Okay. I'll
Yeah,
definitely
I
look
think
into
their
that.
offices
Oh,
still are in
in
that
fact,
building.
I think they had a, I remember hearing they have a plaque on the wall, one of the walls in the somewhere in the building for her, Grace Holt, and I don't remember specifically for what, but they did say I did hear that. So maybe that's why. But
It could be. I mean, but Black Studies should still be in that building, the communications.
hmm
Right. That's where their
Okay.
offices are. So she would
Yeah.
have had to be working very closely with,
hmm
excuse me, um,
Yeah.
funders and, administrators, because it was a big thing to build that building.
hmm
It's a big building, so it was definitely needed. And that's where the theater is housed right now.
Well,
So
I
she
only
had,
have
sure.
I only have two more questions, and then the third question is just it's going to be something about you. But how do you believe Grace Holt should be remembered?
Well, definitely as the founder, as a visionary, as a person
hmm
who, you know, to come into academia, being Black and a woman, she faced particular, I'm sure, struggles. I don't know if she ever documented those,
Yeah.
but it just is the way it is and was. And I think she should be remembered as a person who really looked and wanted to uplift and to explore the beauty of the writers and actors and creators in Black theater, because we needed that in Chicago. We needed that in the college, and it wasn't happening. And it belonged
Mhm.
in, in a collaboration with theater and Black studies. And it wasn't probably going to happen just because, with all respect to the people who've been Black and who have been appointed as chairs or uh, appointed to have positions there. It's the University of Illinois. You have people who come and major, and they don't major in Black theater, they major in theater. So even though
Yeah.
you have a vision and you probably want to present things from across the diaspora, that is not your particular focus. You can't just focus on Black theater because you're not going to be there.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm sure people complain. I'm not there, but I'm sure some of the Black students and I'm some certain white students or students who are not Black complain every time they do a show that they can't be in because we hear
Yeah.
that in professional theaters. Oh, 'cause
Yes.
I was working for a couple of years at Milwaukee Rep, and they had a rep, and but the rep was all white, and so when they brought in Kenny Leon, he did Raisin in the Sun once. They were mad because that was some time that they weren't working. I suppose as a person who
Yes.
wants to work, I could kind of understand it, but they felt that this is their theater. Milwaukee,
Yes.
forget all the Black people in Milwaukee, forget about the tax monies and grants that you got. You have a sense of ownership. And so
Hmm.
um, it would be wonderful, as you suggested, even if a show was done once a semester or once even a year, something in to honor Grace Holt,
Yes.
and because the steps we made within the department that were supported largely by Bill, I bet, um,
Yes.
came uh, with her vision and with her insistence. And I'm sure that we had professors who didn't like it, but she
Yes.
soldiered on. I know we had teachers who, because they would say it. Oh, y'all doing a Black show? Okay, let's go on to the next, what's happening in the season. They would say it in front of our face, So
Right. Right.
she was steadfast,
Yes.
you know.
Thank
Um,
you.
what was her rank when she left? Was she a full professor?
She was tenure. Yeah,
I know she was
she's the
tenured.
first. Yeah, she was the first Black person to be tenured at UIC. I don't
Oh, I
know
didn't
know
realize
if
that. I'm not
yeah, yeah.
surprised because we didn't have anybody. I guess I couldn't think of who else would have been, but just to hear it,
Yes,
you
yes,
need a plaque
yes.
just because of that,
You did, yes, yes.
because that was
So
way
she
in the,
was a trailblazer.
she
And
was.
you and I know from our work in higher ed, it is incredibly difficult and to move up the ranks and to be the first of any, but to do so at the time she was doing and as a Black woman, that's phenomenal. But I can only imagine the weight she must have to carry in order to do what she wanted to do as a leader in higher ed, you know?
Right. Well, let me ask you this, and I probably have the years mixed up, but you could do the research
Mhm.
because it probably somewhere is in archives that Arna Bonta, who was the great friend and writer in his own right, great friend of Langston Hughes, had a I don't know what terms he had. He was there for probably a visiting professor for a year. I
Mhm.
remember because I was so dumb, I didn't take his class. And then I'll think about the other person who Lorenzo Turner, the ethno, you know, uh, expert in Black language and such. He was there as a visiting professor. I'm sure that's probably maybe for a year. But I wonder if she had something to do with bringing them in. I think they were in the English department, but but I can't remember exactly what years they were in. I think they were there in the 80s, iron up on top. And I mean, they would have it in the records because they knew who they were hiring. They knew that they were hiring some big time Black folks. Okay. Uh, but I bet she has, and maybe they had appointments also through Black Studies. If it were in the 80s, maybe they had double appointments. I just always kick myself and I tell my students, when you find somebody, get in the class, just get in the class. I don't know
Yes,
what I was
yes,
doing.
yes.
So that I passed up Anna Bonta and, Lorenzo Turner. Then, later on I'll be reading books about them. I always think, yeah, I could have been in their class. It's just stuff, youth,
Yeah, no,
things you don't
definitely.
do.
Yes, for sure. For sure. My last question before the personal question about about you is as I've studied the Grace Holt papers, I've come to see ethnic theater not simply as a collection of productions, but as a part of Professor Holt's broader vision for transforming the university.
Yes.
To even have that mindset to create ethnic theater and to work with it and try by talking to the chancellor and deans to make it an actual department shows me that her broader vision was about transforming the university. I want to know, does that interpretation resonate with your own memories of Grace Holt?
Oh, yes. She was always transformative. She would counsel people about incidents that happened at the school. I remember people, often people would go. And as a person who was active in the Black student organization, we would, ask her opinion as to what we should do with certain things that came up. So, when you're a Black faculty in a PWI,
Yes,
you are carrying more
yes,
weight than just meeting your classes and
yes,
and doing your research. You become the point person, as I think it's good that you should, but it does. And she never balked at that. I remember, everybody, knew of, everybody referenced her. So she was, as Zora says, big stars falling, but always friendly. And, but she was opinionated. I can remember that. So if she didn't think that what you were doing was right, she would say, no, don't do it that way. So she was, not just
yeah.
patting us on the head and saying good job. She was devoting time and energy into strategy, saying do it this way or do it that way or whatever. So I'm just glad that our paths crossed.
Yeah, yes,
You know,
yes, thank
so she came in 69, and what time, because I knew she got ill. I don't know exactly when she left because I know that she had gotten ill.
you. She got there in 69 and then she was appointed to establish the Black Studies program in 71, and then in 74 she was appointed the first director of the Black Studies department program, and she remained there until 86. And then she retired in 1990, and passed
Right.
away in
She
1990.
passed. And I'm sure she retired because she was ill. She didn't have to.
Yeah.
She didn't probably have to retire,
Mm.
but because she died the next year, right?
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah. Well, she did. She did good service. Hmm.
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 So let me ask, I should have asked, established this in the beginning of our conversation, so forgive me. But for those who will watch this later, can you tell us after you graduated UIC and when you went, what do you do now? Who are you? So you've been teaching at Spelman College, which is Professor Grace Holt's alma mater, by the
But
way.
you told me that, and you know what? I'm going to see if you can tell me the class of. I'm gonna find something, because they keep good archives. So at the very least, they
Oh,
have the college picture of her. They got that.
she graduated in 42.
Okay, let me write that down. 1942. As an
19.
English major, probably.
Uh, it
I'll
doesn't
find out.
say.
What was her?
Okay.
Is that Holt is a married name, isn't it?
Oh, that's a good point.
I thought she was married.
I don't know. I'll have to look into that, actually. And she may
Well,
have been an English major, by the way. But
I don't know. I don't remember. It seems to me. Have you been able to, in your research, if you could find her obituary, that'll tell you some stuff.
no, I haven't. And I'm also trying to uh be sure to get in touch with her daughter. Her daughter was at the presentation I made, but I didn't get to talk to her. It was over Zoom, so I didn't get to chat with her, but she was present. So
Oh,
I
she's
would
going to give you a
love to.
lot of information. And to tell you the truth,
Absolutely. Yes.
the things that don't end up in archives, that end up in people's basements or their storage units,
Yes.
she might have all kinds of things that would be
Yes.
helpful.
Yes.
And just
Absolutely.
the fact that you said daughter, now I know everybody doesn't, isn't married when they have a child. But given the times, given that she graduated from Spelman and they were doing respectability politics, I bet she was married.
Yes, yes,
So, you know, so if you just do, some research, it may say niece or,
absolutely.
and you'll
Yes,
find out her name because if I look up Grace Holt, it probably won't be in, I'd have to go through a yearbook or something and look at all the pictures and find a Grace because that probably wasn't her name at
yes, yes.
Spelman.
Okay, I'll look into that as well. But
But that's that.
so
Yeah. So you got some, some more research just to do because once you
oh yeah.
find out some things about her personally, you're going to find out some more things about. And then you could talk to Haki, who's still alive. His remembrances of Grace Holt, he will remember
Hmm.
her. And then there is, I could look up to see if Thomas Kochman, I haven't talked with him in years, but I'll see if I can find some research. I think he references her in his book, a couple of books too, Grace Holt. And I've really talked to the Black person who was around in theater when I was around, but that doesn't mean that somebody else who came later might have another remembrance of Grace Holt that, when I wasn't there. Uh,
Hmm.
but I'm not so sure who that would be. Uh, but uh, I can even reach out to Lydia Diamond to see if she has any information, you know,
Yes,
uh,
yes.
about Grace Holt and the theater program. You never know what things,
You never. That's
because
right.
Bill had papers. I wonder what happened to Bill's papers. I mean, he
Yes,
had to
yes.
have something.
He has papers, and they are in the archives at UIC. Um, and so I think if I remember correctly, I did reach out to the archivist about his papers. So those are another set of things I have to go through, especially the
Oh,
early
he
years.
will have
But
stuff about her.
for some reason, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like when I tried to look into his Raphael's papers, they started later, like not early as the 60s and 70s
Right,
or
because we
80s.
weren't we weren't doing that kind of
Yes, yes.
saving things. Unfortunately, we weren't.
Right. So I think it started in the 90s forward. And so
Yeah,
yeah. And I wish I would have known about Grace Holt sooner, but when the time I went to UIC to visit, it was 2020, March of 2020, and I see that he passed away May 2020.
yeah,
So,
he was he held on for a long time.
yes,
Um, uh, I went to Russia in a play that he directed, and he took the students from U of I to Russia. That's the only time I've been to Russia. But it was very.
uh,
Now you spoke about Hull House, and
yeah,
I was just interviewed. I think I may have mentioned that before by someone who works now, and he's working on a paper, or it's a book, I think, about the Hull House theaters, and so I don't know if he would have had anything about Grace Holt, but he was actually talking to me about Parkway Community Theater, which was, one of the Hull houses. But he may have some connection, you know. I can send you his name. He may not even know, but Grace Holt. But if she did
yeah,
anything that they were aware of that was in their records, he could tell you.
yeah. Okay, okay.
Maybe she reached out and did something in conjunction with Parkway Community Theater, which was around when she was there, and then it became Experimental Black Actors Guild. See, so
Okay.
uh, and that was a big theater when and
Mhm.
Grace Holt was there, so it could very well be something could be housed in Hull House if she had ever reached out or co-produced or
Mhm.
anything there.
Yes. Okay.
Because she went
Okay.
to
I'll
other,
be
I mean, she was around
yes.
so that she would have gone to other professional theaters. So, you know, uh, to maybe maybe to talk to Jackie Taylor to see if, the Black Ensemble was ever approached by Grace Holder, if they ever had a conversation. Uh, uh, I think the Hull House, well, I don't know if Chuck Smith, who works at the Goodman, would have had a relationship with her. I could send out an email just to people that I know that in theater, just to see if anybody ever had conversations. People who've been around since the 70s, Paymoon Rami, you know, um, Grace Holt, I can do Chuck and Paymoon and Massaquoi, just people that have been in Black theater for some time.
Yes.
And if they know something, you know, they'll say yes.
Yes. Right. Well, I appreciate your help and assistance, and even you taking the time to speak
No,
with
this
me,
is
meet
this is
with me.
exciting. This is what we do, and we have to recover
Yeah.
these things that we've lost, and we have
Yes.
to sing praises and remember and produce documents so other people remember uh, that on whose shoulders they stand.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And I feel blessed to have stumbled upon at that library UIC Grace Holt's um,
it
papers
was,
and to
yep,
see this. So could could bring this to the world, if you will,
right.
and really honor Grace Holt's legacy in a more complete fashion than they already do.
Well, maybe it's you know, I don't often believe in coincidences. It's the time you were supposed to stumble on it, and
Yeah, yeah,
maybe it can be used as fodder for to continue the vision because it's not complete yet, and maybe it should be.
absolutely,
I think your idea
absolutely.
about a Grace Holt professorship or somebody who comes in and does, directs a show or something
Yeah,
in honor of her, and with all of that, they can find funding for that.
yes, for
Hmm.
sure.
And because I don't know what classes they have in Black Studies, but if they don't have a Black theater, Black arts movement, something, then they have to have that. That's too important
Right.
not to have that.
I agree. I agree. And so, a lot of possibilities on the horizon.
Yeah.
And so,
Now, who
um,
is the head of that? I could look it up. I used to.
of the Black Studies Department,
Yeah, yeah. Was Barbara
Joseph,
was
uh,
Barbara Ransby there at some point? I don't know why Barbara Ransby comes up in my head.
I don't know if she was, I'm familiar with her and her work. I just don't know if she was,
I could be
over the
getting
Black
it
Studies
mixed up.
Department at UIC.
Who is it right now though?
It is, um, oh, hold on. It's not, well, first of all, I just Googled something. It says the John D. MacArthur Chair. This is at University of Illinois, Chicago. Is held by Dr. Ransby, Barbara Ransby.
Oh, maybe she
So,
was
but that,
history. Maybe she was history. But I don't know. Seems like I remember. It just
yeah.
popped into my head.
So yeah, she might be in the history because she's a historian. Well, that's interesting. But
I think she was in Black Studies
Joseph
at some point.
Jewell, yeah, Dr. Joseph Jewell
Oh,
is
okay.
the one who is the chair of the Black Studies Department at UIC, and he's the one who invited me to do the presentation in April. Dr. Joseph Jewell.
Okay.
But now Dr. Barbara Ransby, a distinguished professor of Black Studies, Gender and Women's Studies, and
See there.
History. Well, I don't think I knew she was at UIC
I don't know
because
if she still is, but it just popped in my head.
yeah, yeah,
And and she may know that may be a call you want to make too, but reach out to her
yeah,
because she's been there a
yes,
long time. She was there. I don't know what year she came, but she should have come. She should have been there when Grace Holt was there. Or does it say
yeah.
what year she's been at U of I? She might be retired. I don't know.
In 19, no, she 1996, she joined the faculty.
Oh, so
So
I don't know why that name just popped into my head. But
that's
maybe
interesting
she
because I
knows some
have some
stuff
of her.
though.
Yes, indeed. So she would be someone I would definitely I could definitely reach out to her.
Yeah, there may be some papers she knows that
Yeah.
belong to Black Studies that deal with Grace Holt, and she was
Yes.
there. Things are housed. The archivists know a lot, but sometimes they don't know what falls in. I'm sure Black Studies has some papers too,
Yes, yes, yes.
and maybe they have some of her papers that didn't get to the Grace Holt papers. It's possible.
Mm,
You know how research is.
absolutely, absolutely. And and it's the treasure when you stumble upon things or find these kind of things.
Well,
Because even looking in the archives, the Grace Holt papers, I had to ask myself, how could these papers about ethnic theater and all of these performances live in the archives but not known? But I can also understand when people donate or give papers, typically you don't know what all is there and on every single page and paper. Even when archivists separated, like Grace Holt from 1969 to 1970, Grace Holt Black Studies program, you don't always know. You're not digging so deep to find out to spurse out all the intricacies that might be in those boxes.
right.
So
Exactly.
perhaps that's a bit.
Yes. So, it nothing beats, a try. Just try.
That's
Ransby may
that's right.
know about some other papers or something else, or who knows, what she may have discovered when she came,
Yes.
or she may know some other people who knew Grace Hope that you could get more information from. So,
Hmm.
I'm happy. So now are you, what is your ultimate goal? Is it an article? Is it a book? Or is it what do you think?
So my first goal is to start with an article.
Hmm.
My After the article, I do want to do a full-on book about Grace Holt and her legacy, both in Black Studies, but focusing also on theater, illuminating that. So yeah, doing a book about her is the ultimate goal, and perhaps, uh, like we talked about in this discussion, working with UIC at some kind of level about honoring her legacy, Grace Holt's legacy, with a some type of course and professor, a hired professor of some sort, to do that. So those are some of the things I'm hoping and aiming to do.
Well, that's great. Well, let's keep in contact because I would like to do some research on Ann Cook Reed. I've done a little bit, who started the program at Spelman, but also started the Howard University drama program. Her name was Ann Cook Reed. Uh,
Hmm.
and so maybe there could be some way uh, to kind of mesh this
Yes.
kind of work,
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
do you
Yes.
know Khalid
Yes.
Long? He might be able to be
Uh,
helpful to you. Professor
that name
Dr.
is
Khalid Long, he has just been made a full professor at Howard uh, in the theater.
Howard. Yes.
Right. And he is a
Yes.
August Wilson scholar. And he
Okay. I
publishes.
see.
He publishes a lot of stuff.
Yes.
And he has published works of other people. He has not an anthology, but a collection of works of people who write about various things. So you want to, we'll talk again. And I need to reach out to
Yes.
him about something anyway. Not that we're buddies and not our thing, but he, a professor who taught at Spelman, was his mentor when he worked on his PhD, and we met at a conference.
I
So
see he was just promoted to full
yeah, full
professor a couple
professor,
of days ago.
right, right. I saw that too.
Nice.
So
Nice.
he's a person who can help you, find publishing
Yes.
opportunities and such. He seems to be very nice.
Love.
He did his dissertation on Glenda Dickerson, who was the first, well, she wasn't the first, but she was the professor and did a big turnaround with the theater at Spelman College. And I came in, she actually recruited me to come to Spelman. So when he was writing his dissertation, she's published and, all kinds of things, but he wanted to talk with someone who worked with Linda at Spelman. So we talked. And then his mentor
Nice.
being Paul Jackson, who worked along with Glenda also. That's how he kind of found that dissertation. So I found him to be very friendly.
Okay.
And
Wow. I
and
definitely,
then but he's got resources because he's publishing all the time, so he's getting grants to
yes.
do so. So he could, I think like he would be interested in what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
you could
Thank you
reach
for
out to
that.
him and say that. I don't even know if he'd remember my name, but you could reach out to him and remind him that I was the person who was another professor, along with his mentor Paul Jackson at Spelman, and he interviewed me about Glenda. So
Okay.
mhm.
Yes. I'll definitely do that.
He's very prolific in terms of writing things. So
Yes.
I hope to be able to see him at some point soon and get up to Howard.
Yeah.
A lot
No,
of good
I
things
thank you
happening
for
there. Yeah,
yes. I thank you for this, and I'm definitely going to be looking into him and reaching out to as many people. I have now after this conversation have a good list of people to look up and reach out to, and I truly
yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah. And if
I
you
don't
can
want
reach
to
out
take
to
up
the daughter, that would be great.
most
She's gonna
definitely,
have stuff. Well, not
most definitely,
necessarily. You think, but not necessarily. But I think she will. She will have memories
yeah,
of her mother working so hard at U of I. She'll have U of I stories. She'll have that.
yeah, yeah, and I'm sure whatever she has, even if it's not, she may even if by chance she doesn't know anything about the ethnic theater part, and this is all news to her, the stories she will have will be incredibly enriching to understanding Grace Holt even more. So when the
Right.
article or articles and books come about, it would be enriching to that material.
Yeah. We should
Mm.
just maybe Khalid would uh, spearhead just a collection of stories about Black women in theater. Uh,
So when
in
you mentioned,
leadership positions at colleges.
yes, when you mentioned working together on the thing of and and
And Cook Reed.
Clark and Cook Reed, uh, I thought about that like, oh, maybe that could be a book that goes over different women, you
Right.
know.
Yeah. Could
So
be.
we have to remain in touch
Right.
to do
I mean,
something
there
like
could be so many people. There's Kathy Perkins, who's still alive. I don't know
yeah.
if you know Kathy
Oh,
Perkins.
and I follow Kathy Perkins, and I'm a fan of her and her
Right.
work.
But we
Oh
need
yeah,
to
really.
document all her things and all her work. And what's the sister she's just retiring? I never have met her at Washington University, University of Washington. She's just retiring. Mm, Black woman who's been teaching there for years. I'm just now thinking of, uh, how many people there are out there like that. Uh,
Yes,
I,
yes, yes.
uh, I mean, she's a professional director and such. I mean, I could find her name, but there's a woman who passed away at Morgan State, who was is spearheading so much, So actually, that I'd love to talk and be in that conversation because that needs to be done. We really got some, people who really, um, the woman at Alabama State, Tanita Stewart.
Oh,
There's nothing,
okay. See,
there's nothing written about. I mean, we just know her, and
yes,
people who in the know. But while these
no,
people are
yeah,
alive, we need to document some stuff, and I think you want me to shoot. I'll text him. I'll send him an email and say that you're
yeah.
going to contact him. But I have an idea. You know,
Okay,
uh,
okay.
you know,
I'm all for
he
this.
he's a go getter. So and he's already done all kinds of look up his
Mhm.
scholarship first and see the things that
Yes,
he's published and put together. But we haven't done that, and I think that's important. Just people who held college and university positions. That there's you know then you
that's
got
a
all their
that
students that you could interview because the anecdotes
interview.
that they would have. So that's another thing
Yeah,
to search out Grace Holt students
yes,
that are still
absolutely.
around.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So
And that's
you get
I'm
another
excited
viewpoint
to
of
have.
what they did. And so, mm, okay. So we're going to be talking about,
We're locked in.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I would buy that book.
I
The book
would
that we're
too.
talking about, I would buy that book,
Yes,
you know,
yes, I
and
would too. And I think that is a gap area that needs to be filled. This kind of book with this kind of information in it about black black women who served in these theater roles in higher ed and the contributions they've made. You know,
absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I think that's exciting, because there are not that
mhm,
many, quite frankly, that,
yes,
but I mean, I just think about the Atlanta University Center. We have a new chair in the theater department who's a woman, and then the person who is the chair at Clark is a Spelman grad, but she's the chair in the theater program there. And just, people who have done some things, continue to do things and such, even if it's just a page with a picture on that on their
yes,
accomplishments.
yes.
It needs to be done. I can get my little self in there. But you know what? As of 2 days ago, I'm officially retired from Spelman College. So but of course I'm still going up there to help produce something in September. But
Yes,
I will always be attached to that college,
yes.
so
Major congrats.
but it's a major, yeah. So I'm moving on and doing other things. It's time. I tell the chair, I was waiting for her. I didn't know her, but I was waiting for someone that would pull it
Yes,
together. And then that
yes.
gave me in my mind, now it's time. I have permission to leave, you know.
Yeah.
And
And
she's
how long
very good.
were you
Her
there?
name is Natalie So.
How long were you at Spelman?
I came in 1994 under Glenda Dickerson.
1994.
30,
Wow.
32 years. No. But I was at
Okay.
Clark for about 3 years. So, and then I
Okay.
came back to Spelman. So, but they say my date of, that they have, all their records is 1994. So I'm supposed to say that, even though I left and came back, but, so that's, but I'm feeling
Well,
good about that. I feel it's
yeah,
in great
major.
hands, and, I just continue on with theater
Yes,
and the
yes.
struggle. Yeah. Well, thank you. This has been a wonderful way to spend. What is this? Is this the third? I don't know. I don't
Friday morning,
celebrate Fourth of
the
July,
third. Yes.
but the
Yeah.
beginning of the weekend. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm honored, and I'm extremely grateful and appreciative for you taking time again to meet with me on Zoom here and have this extraordinary conversation. I could see this is only the second of many, many conversations you
Yes.
and I will have, especially with that last idea we just talked about.
Yeah. We really
So,
should do that. Contemporary
yes,
leaders. I mean, once we
I'm
sit down and think about the people, you
right.
know, uh, I can just think of, people that I would want to mention at the Atlanta University Center, Carol Mitchell Leon, uh, ooh, I can just think of some people who are, they need to be documented, even if it's just a page of this person did
Yeah.
this did that. Oh, I think that it would be something that people would really use.
Likewise, likewise. And I know some women who are currently still serving in their roles, but who people need to know because they are doing amazing, amazing things. And I mean, one of them is at Yale. One of them is at
Now, who's at
the
Yale?
school Brown. The one at Yale is uh her last name is Brown. I'm looking right now because she wrote a recommendation for me on
Oh, how wonderful! I'd like to get
one
up there.
point.
I have a person I work with in a play. He's going to Yale, and then we have a graduate from Yale who's now directing. Hmm.
Okay. Let me look it
Wow.
up from here. But I have, yeah, and then one is in Pittsburgh. What's this Carnegie Mellon?
Hmm.
So yeah, I have a few people I know we should definitely highlight because the things that they are doing is just phenomenal.
Yeah. So, and I have to look up the person. It was University of Washington. She just published on Facebook a very long letter uh, about her experiences there and such. It was so insightful. I'm going to find it and share it with you. And then there's Frida Scott Giles, who spent many years at University of Georgia. They're not famous names, but they have, in quote, famous, but they have really, as you said, you know, we should know Grace Holt, but we should know all those names too. So
Yes.
uh, I would love to work on a project like that.
Yeah. Okay.
We're gonna
Well,
do it.
that can.
We're gonna do it.
Yes.
We
Most.
pull Kathy Perkins into it, and she has,
That,
and
that,
she is published, and
oh yeah. She's
Leah
always
is
published.
published too. So I'm sure that they
Yes.
enjoy such a project.
Yes. Yes. Thank you even for
Okay, yeah.
seeing that
So
as a
we can put Grace Holt in a context of other
yes of the
visionaries and
others.
people,
Yes.
because people
Yes.
forget those names, and they should not be forgetting those names.
And the
And I
person
mean,
I'm talking about it.
Even Spellman, if you mention Spellman, they say, oh, Carlton and Barbara Millette, and and
Yes.
Baldwin Burroughs. But very few people say anything about Anne Cook Reed, who
Wow.
really started it. You know,
Yes.
so
And the name at Yale School of Drama is Nicole Brewer. Brewer. Nicole
okay,
Brewer.
yeah, I don't know her,
Yes.
but I should know her. So we're gonna know
Yeah.
her. And I like
Absolutely.
to hear what their struggles are too, uh, their unique
Yeah.
struggles as women, as Black women.
Yeah.
Without throwing
Yes.
shade on their organs, their schools, but
Oh,
what
for
their
sure. For sure. For
career
sure.
trajectory has been, what things they have, uh, the challenges they faced as Black women in the academy, because you don't
Yes.
read about that much,
Absolutely. You're right.
right?
You're right.
And we need to know that. So we're gonna get it done. Okay, and then of course Lydia
Yeah.
Diamond is there. Lydia Diamond is there. So
Absolutely.
I mean, nobody's gonna say no to being interviewed.
I don't think so.
They're gonna be
I
mad
think
that
they
they
would be
didn't get
happy.
interviewed.
Yes. How they gonna do this and forget about me?
Well, I remember, there's Elaine Brown wrote a book called Comrade Sisters, and
Oh, yeah,
the
Elaine
insides of
Brown.
the book, right? She just lists
Mhm.
people who were in chapters, just names she knew, and uh, and when I got the book, and I looked at the names of the Illinois chapter, and I said, I'm feeling some kind of way. My name ain't in there. She just didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know
Well,
where they got. I want to say, now, how
which
did they get these names? Blah blah blah. Whenever you list names of people, get ready for craziness, because somebody's
oh
always going to say,
yeah.
"Why is this name in here?" And I did more than that person. I didn't say that, but so we want to
Yeah.
make sure that we, try and be exhaustive in our own way.
Yeah.
You know, uh,
And
so
hey, and it might be a part one, part two kind of a thing, you
it
know?
could be that, and what I think it could engender is that, and I'm at fault myself there. When I was, talking about leaving, archives at Spelman, and they still want to do it, wanted to interview me. And I said, yeah, that would be good. But in terms of keeping papers, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
have papers. I have some programs and shows that I did, but I have so many memories and things that I could talk about.
Yeah.
So whether we do oral histories or whether we're writing these things down, we need to talk about how we got where we got and what's the
Absolutely.
lessons, right? And
Yeah.
so uh, that's what everybody should be doing it. You too, but when you're in it, you're
Yes.
too busy doing it.
You yes, you're just going, but I try my best to keep a track on paper of the
That's good.
experiences I'm having. When I
That is
left
good.
ASU,
So you'll have
I had
papers. I have junk. I don't have papers.
a
Wait a minute. I got bills unpaid that my daughter will
no,
find
I
tomorrow.
got it.
But I really do need to. But actually, I wrote a lot of stuff in my dissertation, so that kind of speaks to
Likewise,
my
likewise.
experiences. Right.
See,
So
that's a track record right there.
that
And
is. It is.
so, congratulations on your newly minted
Yeah.
doctorate.
Yeah. Well,
Major
thank you for
congrats on
saying
that.
that and that we had this conversation. So now I can do the oral history for the archives, but I should just leave my dissertation copy in there because it
Yes,
speaks
yes,
about Spelman, it speaks about a lot of things. So if anybody wants to do some
yes.
research on my family and things that happened to
There
me,
you go.
you go to Spelman and look up, or or go
Bingo.
on ProQuest
Yes.
and look, it's there.
ProQuest. Yes, absolutely.
It will be there.
Absolutely.
I'm embargoed now, but but it will be
Yes,
there. Okay,
yes,
well, this has
yes,
been great. Keep doing a great job,
yes.
Dad. And we'll
Thank you.
talk.
Thank you.
So maybe we should talk next month, and maybe, I can have
Yes,
reached out to some people, so if we know that we're going to talk, then that means I got to do some things in between talking.
yes. That's a good idea. We can do that moving forward, what you just said, and we can do it by I'll shoot you a text message and
Right.
hey,
That's
can we
right.
meet again August, 1 month from now, whatever the case is, and then so we know what we are looking forward to and we can get on
Right.
top of it.
And I'm going to send you some
Thank
things about Anne and Emmett, the production, which has a
you. Yes,
clip of it. And
yes,
it's really, Anne Frank and Emmett Till. It really is an imaginary meeting of them. And Janet Langhart wrote it. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she was a newscaster in the 70s and 80s. And, just really, but she really wrote a beautiful play. And it's been toured many places. It even went to Amsterdam, but now we're picking it up and we're going elsewhere with it. So I'm working with her, and it's really exciting. So maybe you could just read the
yeah.
information. We have gone to some colleges in the past, so let's see what happens.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay,
Well, thank you again, Dr.
all righty
McCarty.
then.
I
You
look forward
take
to
care of
continue.
yourself. Good for you.
Yes, will do.
Give my
Thanks a
regards to
lot.
your family. Take care.
Will do.
All
You
right.
too.
Bye
Thank you.
bye. Talk soon. Bye bye.
Talk to